Happy Friday! So, boys and girls, we are going to be moving away from multiplying fractions and whole numbers today, and we are going to move into our new unit on decimals. We're going to be looking at the tenths, the hundredths in decimal form, as well as in fraction form. Today, we're going to focus more on the fractions, but I did want to introduce decimals to you because this is what we're going to be getting into next week. So decimal is a number that uses place value, numbers, and a decimal point to show part of a whole. The best way to illustrate this and just to make it relevant to you is to think about money. So one whole, we can consider this like $1. So got one whole dollar. Thinking about the tenth of a dollar, thinking about a coin where you need 10 of them to give you $1, we can think about a dime. So this is going to be represented as 1/10. We're going to shade in one of these bars, and we're going to think about our dime. And then thinking about the hundredth, so thinking about a coin that you need 100 of them to give you $1, this would be our penny. And then we're just going to shade in one of those boxes. So you need a lot of pennies to give you $1. So thinking about the fractional form today, we'll get into decimals next week. Thinking about our 1, we can have 1/1. To turn it into our tenths, you could also say 10/10. And then thinking about the hundreds, you could also say 100/100. This information is going to help us better understand the tenth and the hundred. So thinking about 1/10, this is going to turn into 1/10. So that's where our 10/10 comes in for our 1/10 with our dimes. And then our hundredth is going to be 1/100 because you need to add them 100 times to give you a whole, give you that whole dollar, okay? So thinking about this information and converting in between your tenths and your hundreds. Again, just with fractions today, we'll do decimals next week. So thinking about converting these, we're going to do a few examples down here. So let's say you have 2/10 and you want to convert this into hundredths. Thinking about what we've done in the past with your equivalent fractions, that's the same thing that we're doing now. You need to make these two fractions equivalent. In order to do that, you're going to have to multiply the same thing on the bottom and on the top. So thinking about our denominators, thinking about how we can get from 10 to 100, there's only one number that we can multiply by to get you from 10 to 100, and that is going to be 10. So thinking about these fractions being equivalent, you would have to multiply the same thing on the top, so you'd be multiplying by 10/10. Going across now to have 2 times 10, that's going to give us 20. So 2/10 is the same thing as 20 hundredths. Now on the other side of things, let's say that you were given 70 hundredths and it wanted you to turn it into tenths. Instead of multiplying to get you to a bigger value, you're going to be dividing. Again, they are equivalent. They're going to be the same thing. They just look and are represented a different way. So thinking about the way that these are represented, we're going to have 100 going to 10. Since we're going smaller, we are going to be dividing on this side. And again, there's only one number that we can divide by to get you down that far, which is going to be 10. Do the same thing on the top. So we're going to be dividing by 10/10. So 70 hundredths is the same thing as 7/10. Okay, so looking at your worksheet for today, your practice for today, it has the same information on top so that we don't forget. It is very important because this is the first time that we're really focusing on this strategy that you do show your work in between just to make sure we're not getting stuck. Okay, so we're going to work on a few of these together. The rest are going to be by yourself. And then again, fill out that Google form when you are done so we can check your answers. So looking at our first one of 20 hundredths, we're starting at the hundredths, going down to 10. So since we're starting higher, going smaller, we're going to be dividing by 10. Again, do the same thing on the top and the bottom. So 20 divided by 10 is going to give us 2. So 20 hundredths is the same thing when simplified with our equivalent fraction to 2 tenths. Moving on to number 2, going from tenths to hundredths. Since we're going bigger, we're going to be multiplying by 10. So 9 times 10 is going to give you 90. So 9 tenths is the same thing as 90 hundredths. Number 3, again, going from 100 to 10. We're going to go back to our dividing by 10 tenths. And then 70 divided by 10 is going to give you 7. So 70 hundredths is the same thing as 7 tenths. It's just a different way to represent that value. Go ahead and work out the rest of these problems. Fill out the Google form. Let us know when you are done, and we will go over and check your answers.